Yeah, look, because I like my kidneys, I'm gonna film this over a couple of days. Might not be the most continuous thing in the world, but that's the insurance that I'm paying to keep my kidneys from needing dialysis. Anyway, yeah, let's eat some instant noodles.
Are you a uni student or an early professional with no real time, money, or skills? You've come to the right goddamn place. Welcome to The Bad Chef. Fast and cheap meals for fast and cheap people.
My name is Chi, and I'm a bad chef. Now, I pride myself on this channel for cooking things that are cheap and fast enough for regular people. But what if, even then, that's not cheap or fast enough? What if you're even broker and more time poor than I am? And what if after all the mental fatigue caused by the simple chore of existing, you barely have enough mental fortitude to boil water? Because, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be abandoning all thoughts of health today and going straight for the most amount of sustenance that you can get for the least amount of money. And the most efficient way to do that is instant noodles. Now, how to make instant noodles is pretty common knowledge. You just make them as per the instructions in the back of your packet. But today what I'm going to be showing you is how to add a little bit to your noodles to increase the experience of eating them hugely. And yeah, it'll boost your noodles to the point where it'll distract you from the inconvenient reality that free-range chicken probably lives a better life than you do. Anyway, let's talk about noodles.
In the import instant noodle market in Australia, there are three giants. Indonesia has Indomie, whose biggest export is mee goreng. Japan has Nissin, who makes the Nissin ramen noodles, and Korea's Shin produces pretty much every single Korean juggernaut, including shin ramyun, chapagetti, and neoguri.
Now, aside from these noodles, there's also the Maggi or Maggi or whatever the fuck it is noodle from Switzerland. But they taste like shit and they're owned by Nestle, and Nestle are a bunch of cunts. So fuck them. There's also the good old domestic Aussie favourite called Fantastic Noodles, but frankly, they're anything but, save for the nostalgia factor of buying them from a school canteen in 2002 for about $1.70 a piece. So we're excluding those two applicants, one for egregious infringements upon human rights, the other for being too much of a novelty in primary school. Alright, hajimemashou. Now the first noodle we're going to take a look at is the Nissin noodle, and this one's called chjigae. Technically it's a type of ramen, it's from Japan, but it's found an absolute cult following in Hong Kong. Which is why I suppose my parents decided to induct one of their childhood favorites into my upbringing. But it was a cheap and effective way of hitting the spot just right on a cold winter's morning.
The red Nissin noodle is the OG flavour of sesame oil and MSG, but there's also a tonkotsu, black garlic, XO seafood, chicken, 5-spice beef, and dozens of other weird and wonderful flavours.
Now, out of all these flavours, my favourite one is the XO seafood flavoured one, this yellow packet right here, right? And you know me, I'm a sucker for XO sauce. It's packed full of flavour, and the fact that you can get a bag of it in an instant noodle that costs 50 cents? Bargain, sign me the fuck up. So since it's XO flavored, it pairs really well with eggs and also fish tofu cubes.
So that's what we're going to do today. Fish tofus are a staple in hot pot ingredients, and they can be found in the frozen section of an Asian mart. They're usually around $10 to $13 per kilo bag, and they're insanely easy to eat, mostly because they're satisfyingly bouncy to the teeth and have a great texture. To cook them, you only need to boil them for about 7 to 10 minutes, and then they're done. To cook a soft-boiled egg, if you've taken large ones straight out of the fridge, they'll take about 6.5 to 7 minutes to cook at a rolling boil, so you can cook them at the same time as the fish tofus. When the eggs are done, crack them gently and run them under cold water. This will help the eggs separate a little bit better from the shell. The noodles will take about 3 minutes to make, so boil them while you're shelling the eggs. And then it's time to assemble. First, make the soup base with some hot water, then chuck in the noodles, eggs, and fish tofus in any old haphazard way. If you have some spring onion or some sesame seeds, bung that on as well, make it look pretty. Introduce what little fiber you can to your diet. I'm also going to be finishing mine with a bit of extra XO sauce. And you're done.
Oh, delicious. Of course, you know, it's just an instant noodle, but that MSG and carb combo, you can't beat it. One of my favorite things to do with the eggs is actually to break it over the top of the noodles so that all the yolks run down. Oh, look at that. That's perfect. Right, as I was saying before, one of my favorite things to do with the eggs is actually to break them open over the noodles so that all the yolks drip down through the noodles into the soup and it mixes together to create this like gorgeously creamy sauce. As for the fish tofus, well, we're giving a lot of control of the flavor to the corporations who made this. But the texture, right? It's just so bouncy and fun to eat. Oh. As for the costs, if you're buying these in bulk from an Asian mart, expect them to be about 50 cents a piece. But if you're buying them individually, expect them to be about 85 cents at an Asian mart or about $1 at Woolworths. The fish tofus, for 6 of them, that's 75 cents. The eggs, barn-laid ones, for 2 of them, it's about 65 cents. So all up, this bowl of noodles is roughly around $2. But there you go, a nissin noodle with some fish tofus and a soft-boiled egg. A timeless winter warmer classic. All right, let's put away all these goddamn noodles.
All right, let's do the second noodle.
Shin ramyun. This is the first stop for spice chasers, and it's one of the first instant noodles that I ate that was actually a little bit spicy. And nobody does spicy like the Koreans do. After all, they are a spicy people, and that's what I love about them. But yeah, the way that I like to eat this is in basically what is like a poor man's version of a budae jjigae, which is a South Korean army stew. Now, budae jjigae is definitely not a health food. It was created to be an army ration, which means that it had to be calorie dense, hot, and filling while being military grade, which basically just means that it has to be as cheap as possible with no real expiry date. And my poor man's version is a heavily simplified version of that that's even more destructive for your kidneys because it consists almost entirely of highly processed rations that I keep as a backstop in the case that I run out of food. So basically what this will have would be Spam, sausages, processed cheese, mushrooms, some eggs, and some spring onion on top of the noodle itself. But yeah, anyway, let's get cooking.
To make this, first slice up the Spam, sausages, and mushrooms. I like to slice my sausages into little octopi because I'm childish like that. Then, fry all that off in a medium-sized pan with a tablespoon of oil. When that's done, arrange them nicely, clear a little space in the middle of the pan, then pour in enough water just to cover the height of the noodle, or about 600 to 700 mils of water. Then, add the seasoning, the dried vegetables, chuck in the noodle, then crack in 2 eggs where there's space. Cook that noodle for about 3.5 minutes. The noodle will be undercooked by about a minute at that point in time, but the residual heat will cook it through. Slap on a Kraft single or 2, add some spring onion, and that's it.
Perfect.
Now, noticeably, with more elements, the cost will increase. A can of Spam is about $2.50 when it's on special, a packet of shit tier Frankfurts is about $5 a kilo, and Kraft singles are about $5 for a pack of 25. 2 eggs are 65 cents, mushrooms are about $11 a kilo, and the noodle itself is 80 cents each when bought in a pack of 5. So all up per serving, you're looking at about $3 for a pan of noodles and all the accompaniments.
Alright, in honesty, this isn't really cooking. You're not really taking the flavors into your own hands here. You're letting some corporate company decide. But to be honest, you've already forsaken cooking the moment that you decided to eat instant noodles for dinner. But as far as that goes, it's a lot of fun to eat. And also it's absolutely disgusting. Disgustingly good. Oh! For those concerned about the spice level, don't be. Because the cheese itself is so fatty and it melts down through the noodles into the soup, it actually neutralizes most of the spiciness, so it ends up quite mild actually. It's delicious. And hell, booty jiggle is a goddamn treat to eat. Mostly because it's packed full of processed salts and fats, but that's precisely what makes it so goddamn tasty. And as far as winter warming rations go, it's really hard to get past a poor man's budae jjigae. A resilient and characterful meal.
Alright, next noodle, chapaguri.
If you've watched the movie Parasite, you'll know that one of the symbolic foods for the socioeconomic disparity between the rich and the poor is ramyun. Or as they refer to it in the movie, is chapaguri. And that comes from mixing the dark buckwheat flavor of the chapagetti with the spicy seafood flavor of the neoguri.
This one's a lot simpler to make than the budae jjigae. To make it, boil the noodles and the dried vegetable flakes as per the instructions on the packet. When the noodles are done, drain them but save about half a cup of the starchy water and dump the noodles into a bowl. Add the seasoning powders with about a quarter cup of the starchy noodle water, then stir the seasoning and water into the noodles until it has a glossy, saucy appearance. The noodle in the movie doesn't have any garnishes, but for this one, I'm going to use some toasted sesame seeds.
Now, at this point, your noodle is about $2 for a double serving, but the moment you think about adding steak, it goes up to anywhere between $8 to $10. If you're trying to emulate the movie, good luck. You'll need some hanwoo steak for that, and that's well over $100 a kilo in Australia if you can find it. So don't do that.
Instead, for today, I'm frying up a bit of budget scotch seasoned with salt and pepper. Because the discount steaks are a little bit thinner, usually 90 seconds to 2 minutes aside in a screaming hot pan with a splash of oil will cook it to a medium doneness. These discount steaks usually go for about $6 for 200 grams.
But if you're still super broke, I'd recommend going to a Korean butcher and seeing if they have any of that pre-packaged bulgogi. It goes for about $12 per kilo, so a double serving would run you about $6, which means that this, as a single serving, would be roughly $4 a head.
Perfect.
Of all the noodles, this one tastes the most meaty. Like, even without the beef, the sheer amount of dark flavor and well-supported MSG makes this taste a lot fuller than any instant noodle has a right to be. And paired with steak, ooh, chapaguri is a goddamn heavyweight. Just like you will be after you eat this meal.
And last but not least,
Me goddamn goreng. It's probably made of industrial runoff, and it'll make your pee glow orange for the next couple of hours. But I don't care, it's a cult classic, it's mee goreng. Uni students all around Australia eat mee goreng. And if you're overseas and you haven't had the chance to try one of these Indonesian delicacies, pester an Australian exchange student for one because they're likely to have them. But get ready to trade, because mee gorengs are an underground currency whose buying power is a force to be reckoned with. Now, in terms of eating, the mee goreng by itself is pretty much good enough as it is. But if you want to add a little bit of extra stuff to it, you could try to emulate a Malaysian style mee goreng by adding a scrambled egg, some fish tofu, some frozen prawns, and a touch of extra sambal or sriracha if you don't have sambal. And as for me, I've got some Thai fish cakes kicking around as well, so I'm gonna add that too. Not because it's a legit part of the recipe, it's just because I like them.
to make it is easy. Chuck all the frozen shit into a pot, dump in some boiling water, and blanch it for 3 minutes. This won't fully cook everything, but it gives it a chance to cook through in the pan later on. When that's done, cut the fish tofus in half, then all of your accompaniments will be ready for frying. With the noodles, make them as per the instructions on the packet, but undercook them by half a minute. Chuck in all the seasonings, mix it together, and the noodles are ready for the pan. Now, heat up a non-stick pan on high heat and crack 2 eggs into it with a bit of oil. Scramble the eggs, then add the fish tofus and the prawns with a touch of sambal, then fry it all together until it browns off. Chuck in the noodles, toss it all together, dump it into a bowl, decorate it a bit, and then you're done.
Perfect.
Ooh. Holy shit, dude. Honestly, I have no idea how to make this taste that good. Like, they had to put something like cocaine or crack inside that bag with white powder in it, because that's the only reason that I could think of that explains why this tastes so goddamn addictive. Flavor enhancer 621631627. Maybe that's code name for cocaine. Now, cost. Frozen prawns aren't necessarily the cheapest thing in the world. They run for about 27 Australian dollars per kilo if you get them on special. So a handful of frozen prawns will be roughly around $2 to $3. So if you want to go even cheaper than that, you could go with the old faithful solution of 2 eggs on top of your mee goreng with a little bit of extra fried onion on top. You could get this for about $2, $2.50 at an Asian mart. And that will make your mee goreng a $1 meal to boot. As for the noodles themselves, if there's something worth bulk buying, this would be it. Because Western supermarket chains will charge you about $1 a piece for them individually. But if you go to an Asian store, you can pick up a pack of 10 for about $4 or a box of 30 for $10. Which means that this pretty much works out to be 30 to 40 cents per noodle. And basically for what is culinary crack, I reckon that's a bargain. But yeah, that's pretty much a mee goreng for you. An Asia Pacific regional mainstay, an absolute juggernaut in the instant noodle game. Alrighty, conclusion. Now, I like to make the point that eating instant noodles long term is not a sustainable solution. Because of the amount of bullshit that they put inside these noodles, is enough to make your heart seize up and cark it if you ate nothing but noodles for a week straight. So don't do that. But if you only have 30 minutes to cook, eat, and clean, and you only have about $3 per meal to last you to the next paycheck, there's nothing that beats the instant noodle in terms of ease of cooking, speed, and cost. Of course, it's not exactly the healthiest thing in the world. You forego health, but sometimes you're down to your last $10. Sometimes you're cramming 13 weeks worth of university content into 1 week of stew back. And sometimes you're just plain old hungover and you want 3 mee gorengs with a stack of eggs. Because when you eat an instant noodle, you might not exactly be winning at life, but it's a refuge where you can just sit down and recover for a while. It's a sanctuary without judgment where you can forget the intricacies of being alive for just a little moment. What a feeling that is. Just to be here and just to breathe. And also to eat carbs and MSG. Yeah, there you go. 4 styles of instant noodles. All done.
My